Welcome to Current Affairs. My name is Nathan Robinson. I'm the editor-in-chief of Current Affairs magazine. I am joined today by two of the greatest cartoonists of our time and illustrators, Matt Bors, Ben Clarkson. They are the authors. They are the illustrators of the new comic book, Justice Warriors. Ben Clarkson, Matt Bors, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
Thanks for having us.
All right, you're going to have to introduce the world of Justice Warriors to our listeners and readers. I was going to, but I would describe this as indescribable. In fact, there is a blurb on the front of Justice Warriors. Justice Warriors is no doubt some kind of elaborate hoax. It requires only that you succumb to its power to confound, outrage, and delight. I think that would make anyone open it and have a look at it. But perhaps you have your succinct explanation of what I have here in my hands.
We're very proud of that quote as well, because it's by the incredible Peter K. Chung, the creator of Aeon Flux, which is an unbelievable example of experimental and popular animation, which everyone should go check out. Yeah, Justice Warriors is a police procedural set in the future's most unequal city. It tells the story of Swamp Cop and his new partner, rookie partner, Shit, who is a walking anthropomorphic pile of shit.
But that's spelled S-C-H-I-T-T.
Yeah. It's his wife's last name. She's German.
So her appearance is a little unexpected. There's a little bit of a contrast. He did well for himself, shall we say.
Yeah. No, Shit's a charmer. Shit's an enjoyable character.
Oh, yes.
One of the things that I have to admire about the talent that you both have is that you have the ability somehow in this book to make not only a police officer, but a police officer who is literally a walking poop emoji, and a very vivid, sticky pile of shit, an endearing character.
Yeah, well, as the blurb says, we want to confound and delight. I really think, and outrage. Yeah, and outrage. So he's a cop because he's bad, and he kills innocent people. And also he's kind of funny, and he's the protagonist. And we're trying to do a lot of things. We're very into merging the high and the low brow in this series. It's got poop jokes. It's got a ton of violence and mutants killing each other. And then it also has dialectical Marxist tarot card readers.
Yes, there's astrology. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of astrology. So the book is based in Bubble City, which is the world's first perfect city. It's a megatropolis, domed, arcology, mega city thing from all your favorite animes, but then just outside of its perfect little social barrier of its enviro shield is a sprawling, unending wasteland slum, which is called the US, or the uninhabited zone, where the majority of people live, which goes to the horizon, and it needs to be brutally policed to make sure that nothing bubbles to the surface to threaten the bubble.
Yeah. Succinct description, I think, is RoboCop on acid.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to this, and I don't know where to start. I completely delighted and confounded me. As soon as I got my copy in the mail, actually, they sent us 2 copies. And not only did I tear through this, but the second copy I had, the first person I saw afterwards, I foisted the copy on them, and I said, I have something special for you that is like nothing you've ever seen before.
That's great. That's what we're going for. There's a lot of familiar tropes here. Like Ben said, it's police procedural for one. And it's got a lot of aspects of, dystopians that you've seen before, mega city type stuff. But we're trying to crank it up to, past 11 and add in a lot of politics.
Yeah. Who's the other police officer? The one with the, what do you even call the things sticking out the side of his head? Sorry.
Oh, Swamp Cop.
Yeah. Oh, Swamp. Okay.
I assume those are his ears.
I don't even know what the part of the body is.
everybody in the uninhabited zone is a mutant of a different variety, and not even just kind of like regular mutants, that whatever that might be, but like you're getting literal cartoon characters, like they're from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Shit is a kind of a shit emoji, but there's like, in the background there's just dozens and hundreds of mutants that Ben drew, who one has the R-Mutt urinal, the famous piece of art, as their head with cartoon eyes on it. It's just a completely wacky upside down world, but also a serious one.
Compared to the interior of this bubble city, which is mostly just self-obsessed social media influencer bourgeois looking very nipped and tucked. So there's a marked division between sort of the weird and then acceptable society, as well as one of inequality, as well as policing, as well as environmental catastrophe. Basically, every division or apartheid that we face, we accentuate and concentrate on this single city.
This is Ben's term, but Justice Warriors is a mega satire.
I like that. Yeah, no, the social medias, I didn't even think about this. I think crypto comes up in here, the money supply. It's not that long, but I just wanted to say that my favorite of the freaky looking mutant people is the one based on the Blobfish.
Oh.
Yeah, Brutality, yeah.
Yeah, there's a cop. Cops are portrayed as, particularly corrupt in this world, but Brutality is sort of above and beyond the rest. He's a Blobfish cop, and his ideology is, a bit like the Punisher, and he wants to take on crime himself and just slaughter some people. So he does that, but won't spoil what happens.
Yeah, a lot of the book is a sort of a conglomeration of all of these police fiction tropes. And as Matt said, we crank them up to 11 and mash them together, while at the same time trying to tell some sort of story about how Matt and I think the world works from a clear-eyed, almost God's eye perspective, without being didactic, without shoving a message down the reader's throat, and leaving it up to the reader's intelligence to sort of sort out what all of it means.
Well, I have to say that's one reason why it was really appealing to me, because, Ben, you have illustrated a lot for Current Affairs.
Guilty.
In the past. And actually, I wanted to say that in your bio in this book, it says Ben Clarkson has produced illustration for some of the best magazines and newspapers in the world, which, as the editor of Current Affairs, I can affirm.
Yeah.
But one of the things we've tried to do in Current Affairs, and one of the reasons your work fits so well into our magazine, is present leftist political ideas without being boring.
Yeah.
And try and be fun and use cartoons and use satire and use humor to try and appeal to normal people who want to enjoy themselves when they read things.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I think that's one of the reasons why I kind of got out of political cartooning and wanted to do longer form fiction stuff, even if it's very political. A political cartoon, you don't want it to be interpreted any way other than what you're intending usually. This story, I think a lot of our positions are clear, but like Ben said, it's not about kind of telling the reader how to feel, and we're ultimately doing a story where the cops are protagonists, and it's not about all the characters having the right opinions and mouthing them to the reader.
Yeah, something I think about when we talk about this aspect of enjoyment is I always think back to the Bernie campaign, and one thing that really got me was he had the line, "Our revolution has dancing." And then he would just whisk off dancing with his wife. And however you feel about the Bernie campaign and what happened with it, I still carry that idea around. We should have some level of enjoyment with what we're doing. And we can't always be dour and serious, because you'll go nuts.
Well, and that's why I loved the Pete Buttigieg campaign and his supporters, because they had that dance they were doing.
Oh, God, yeah.
I don't know if you remember this, but it was...
I do remember the dance. I learned the dance.
Really inspiring stuff. And I do that dance every time a train wrecks and Pete Buttigieg doesn't show up for 10 days.
Every time my flight is delayed.
I have to say, I did the dance. I mean, everyone mocked the dance, and obviously the videos of Buttigieg supporters were very funny. I think it's an enjoyable series of movements to do.
You're coming out. You're coming out on public record in favor of the Buttigieg dance. I didn't even remember that until Ben talked about dancing. I thought, oh God, I remember that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I agree that dancing and fun are good things for the left.
But it's not just that they are a kind of relief from, oh, we have to present all the serious, horrible political ideas, and then you can have a little fun as well. But in fact, it turns out that I think that one thing we found at Current Affairs is that satire is and cartoons and stuff are actually a pretty effective way to convey ideas. And of course, I have to go back to Matt Bors. You created probably the most reposted leftist cartoon of the 21st century, right?
Well, quite an honor.
And your book, I think, is titled after it.
Yeah.
It's the We Should Improve Society somewhat. I think when it's usually posted, it's even one panel from a 4-panel cartoon.
Yeah, it's just the last panel. I mean, it's just like any other cartoon I did. I just drew it and posted it and really never thought about it again in the moment. And then I don't know when it started. I did it in 2014. It started picking up steam somewhere. It sort of slowly got big, and then people kept posting it, and then they still do. I've gone through all sorts of emotions about it, like not caring, to being like kind of tired of it, to being like flattered. And I'm just glad that it's kind of known as the Matt Bors comic, is like how most people know it, because I get the name recognition. It's great.
Yeah, because most people who create a meme or something, it doesn't become known as the someone meme. You take well. So the reason I bring it up is I think you have done funnier cartoons than that, but I think that what is so brilliant about that and why it gets reposted over and over is actually that nobody has yet found a more succinct way to respond to a particular terrible talking point. So it is in response to this idea, oh, you dislike capitalism, but you have an iPhone. And of course, you depict the peasant saying we should improve society somewhat, and the sort of smiling libertarian saying that you participate in society. How very curious. But what it does is it effectively illustrates an idea.
Yeah, I like doing cartoons like that. I think even more than certainly, drawing politicians and having them say shit, and then a week later no one understands even what it was about, because it's so pegged to some news article of the moment. So it started out as a rebuttal to an online argument. Like you said, you have an iPhone, yet you participate in society. And now I've had to, think and talk about this comic so much. I see it anytime I log into Twitter. Almost I see it because somebody's tagged me in the posting of it in response to somebody, and then people use it wrong, and people get mad at them for using it in the wrong way or whatever. But it's a central political idea of our time, is that we all want to improve society somewhat, or that's what we're begging, maybe a lot, but we're at least begging for it to happen somewhat. And then it's being negated by the right or contrarians by suggesting that existing in a capitalist system obliterates any critique that can happen in it.
Mm-hmm. But you could teach this cartoon in a political philosophy, class as an exhibit. So I really don't want to make you talk about the cartoon, because I know it haunts your life.
Say more about the cartoon, Matt. I want to know more about the cartoon.
Yeah. Well, the third panel doesn't get a lot of play. I think it's great. There's a guy, it's like it goes back through time. It's like a guy in whatever year, early 1900s, and he says there's a crashed car, and he says cars should have seat belts. And then the guy pops in and says, "Yet you own a car, hypocrite." And nothing can move forward or improve from its current state.
Yeah. But the point being that the enduring resonance of that really, I think, is a testament to how we can, through satirical cartooning, essentially help people to better understand, help people to explain how they feel about the world. And so to get back to Justice Warriors, let's talk about some of the things that you hope that are kind of conveyed in your construction of this fictional world.
Yeah, I think we want to give people visual and conceptual, metaphors or ideas that, could translate to the real world. I think one of the main ones is how Bubble City functions, not just physically, but economically. There's the boom and bust cycles that happen with sort of each issue. And Ben, you should talk about that because I've been talking about my cartoon.
So the thing that sort of sets the plot in motion initially is that the prince is sort of a pastiche of the recording artist Prince, Trump, and then a bit of Kanye in there for good measure. Sort of a very preening, self-obsessed, narcissistic pseudo ruler. He's a mayor as well as a prince. His role isn't really specifically nailed down on what his responsibilities are, but his record isn't selling. And so he, with the help of one of his economic advisors, come up with an idea to turn his record into basically an unregulated security. And so what they do is they set up a sort of a federal discount window or a buyback program. Basically, they set up quantitative easing, but with a record instead of treasury bills. And they just start printing records and handing them out with vouchers to be bought back. And it causes an enormous speculative bubble, which instantly crashes the second that it hits the real economy. And that sort of satirical take on central bank action mixed with a form of class warfare is what sets off the initial action of the book. And then from there, it ripples out to have the police trim the line or smooth down the edges of the political and economic failures of the leadership of the bubble to take into consideration the realities of the us. And then that sets up another set of economic bubbles where bread becomes a speculative commodity and people are hoarding the precious carbohydrates they need from day to day. And then that leads into a need to drop liquidity into the us. So they quickly create an enormous amount of helicopters, which then drops the price of helicopters. So now everyone has a helicopter and it's an unregulated free for all in the skies where the police are once again deployed to make sure that everything goes well for the bubble. And that sort of just repeats over and over again until a group of incredibly enraged and alienated people sort of rise up instead of some sort of authentic, spontaneous understanding of how the system works, sort of a twisted, social media infused set of vibes, which blows up in their face once it hits the spiky wall of policing.
I hope nobody's been too discouraged from buying this by your
it's a comedy.
promise
Yeah.
that it includes a satirical take on central bank action, which I think it is.
I think the economic and the banking stuff goes down real easy because it's,
It's very silly.
Yeah, you understand the guy wants to sell his record. Then you've got the Bread King, who's kind of a Jim Cramer hologram for this world, who's just encouraging everyone to buy this commodity, put their fortunes into bread and hold it. But I think the average person can digest Justice Warriors. That's the goal.
Yeah, on its surface, it doesn't require you to understand central bank action. Basically, you need to know how to read and follow pictures. It's there for you to hold your hand, and it's a lot of fun.
Can you tell me more about the function of social media in this world?
Very similar to our own.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the main things we wanted to critique in addition to police and economics. Everybody is mega online. Maybe not everybody. I don't know how online Swamp is, but the police chief, for instance, who is a cybernetic woman, is constantly online, obsessed with her menchies, her haters, and the losers online who talk about her. The prince, obviously, is obsessed with his numbers and engagement and popularity. And everyone else is hooked on social media. The movement that Ben talked about that is sort of starts as an anti-police movement, but has its own ideology. They're the Libra gang, and they're obsessed with zodiac charts and astrology, and they're all Libras. And they want to put Libras inside the bubble and upend the system. But mostly just for Libras. All the other signs don't get to come along, and there's sort of a hierarchy. Cancers are the word cancers they want to exterminate. Everyone else will have a role in society. And they're very vibes based and talk like they're super online. They spread what they're doing through social and stream executions and also care about their numbers. And then there's a little more to, what we're saying about how these ideas spread through social media and sort of take over people, which is influenced by everything from QAnon to anti-vax stuff, which was going on at the time we wrote this, to actual Zodiac stuff that people are into to a huge degree in a sort of a semi-ironic way. And then all the weird TikTok stuff, all the weird, like people developing Tourette's tics because they watch too many Tourette's influencers. Like all that stuff was sort of taken and reshaped into the Libra gang.
Yeah, it's sort of digital contagious hysteria.
I think one of my just absolute favorite little satirical things you put in here that made me laugh out loud, even though it's a small one, is when Swamp Cop's partner is killed. He has on a tablet has to do this, like, this goes to this software that's sort of an automated grief counseling software that says, hi, you've suffered the loss of your partner, and it inserts the name. We hear you and see you. Fill out this fun quiz, and we'll tell you which Bubble City Police Department animal you're most like. And then it says, MFW, my partner dies, and you have to select the emoji that best characterizes your state of grief, and then press skip ad, and then it gives you a free drink.
Yeah, well, that's happening now,
right?
And then soon it'll happen when your partner dies and you have to do your mental health evaluation quiz, brought to you by Axios in partnership with Lockheed Martin.
Yeah.
Those fucking companies sponsor Axios and Politico newsletter, that type of stuff. Yeah, people have commented during the Trump era, oh, how can you do satire? Satire dead and everything. And it's like, well, we just have to go further than anyone else, make it weirder and stranger and have mutants and everything. But this stuff is happening now, or beginning to happen, and that quiz is part of sort of how the bubble operates, which is like a bad, Elon Musk is in charge, but also like DEI consultants.
Yeah.
And there's BuzzFeed quizzes, and you're told that you're heard and you're seen during your mental health evaluation. And then you get your drink ticket and you go back to work.
Yeah, it's like the fusion of McKinsey and BuzzFeed.
But everything's mediated by tech, and clearly there aren't many meaningful, strong human relationships.
No.
Other than Shit's marriage, which seems pretty...
It's wholesome.
But once again, you only see her on a screen.
That's right. She's never there.
She only appears on a screen. A lot of characters only, and then she's just as astrology pilled as anyone else is.
She could be a deep fake for all we know.
Yeah, no, nothing is real, and Swamp even sees things that he can't be sure are real or are not real throughout the entire book. There is a strain of solipsism throughout the whole book of what's going on inside characters' heads and their sort of cognitive mapping of the world drives them further and further into these extreme and hysterical perspectives, and further away from any sort of cogent response to the challenges that they actually face.
It's interesting what you're saying about people saying that, how could you do satire in an age when Donald Trump became the president? But I think you have proved with this that it is possible. You just have to be creative.
You just got to go crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's felt like during the 21st century that we crossed over into a world that had been talked about, but is lamer and worse than was ever imagined in science fiction. We have drone delivery, like apps mediate our life,
but they don't work.
Yeah, everyone is trapped into a gig job where they have to work hard to deliver the food and the Amazon books that you buy on Justice Warriors. Please go get it. And then bring it to you at your computer job where you write email all day. I mean, it's troubling.
As I just flicking back through this, yeah, it did strike me you mentioned that the police chief is obsessed with social media messages. She actually responds to, like many people who you think in our world would be too important to respond to every little person on Twitter who says something mean about them. J.K. Rowling, Elon Musk.
Yeah.
The person who personally engages.
Yeah, what is Elon doing?
Yeah, you see, there's no such thing as being important enough or rich enough that you can resist this machine that's designed for addiction for people who clearly crave it, like J.K. Rowling and Elon Musk. They can't be offline and happy and waiting in their billions of dollars. Everyone's affected by it. We have the chief. I do Ben draws the whole book, but I have like backup strips, like a 1-page strip after each story, after each issue.
Chapter, we call them in the trade.
Yeah.
It's very obvious where you come in, I have to say, Matt. Your style is so distinctive.
Yeah, so there's one where a little kid is arguing with the chief online and he like dunks on her, and then police come in the middle of the night and take him out of his bed and arrest him, and then post something on his feed for him saying like, I'm done with the drama, I'm out of this website.
Yeah, the form of social media, even like you mentioned apps, you mentioned like the delivery apps, Matt. And like the form of the delivery app is basically that it gets to simulate for you, the end user, what it's like to have a servant. That's like the digital Brazilification of the world, right? Like everyone can log on, pay $25 and have someone deliver spare ribs to them at any moment. But I guess if you're one of these social media influencer people, it's sort of the app-based experience of being a king or a small lord. And so they expect that they get to be tyrants over everyone. And there's one thing that tyrants love, and it's to demand to be loved. And when they don't get it, it's infuriating. It's like if you pay for your Grubhub order and you don't get your Korean barbecue on time, you're enraged. It's this seamless world of convenience, but once it hits the actual human and material world, it all falls apart.
I think it's fair to say that nobody in the world, the very vivid world with clearly functioning systems, everything kind of worked out, nobody in this world you have depicted for us is having a great time.
Not truly. I think there are a lot of people who are distracted. They're having a mediated time.
Yeah.
I think everyone in the bubble, we don't get too deep into the lives of a lot of people in the bubble outside of the prince.
No, I was curious about that. I would love to know more about the actual world of the bubble itself.
Well, I think the short way to say it is that, first of all, it's described in the beginning as a bubble of a world of prosperity, a city of prosperity, diversity, and inclusion, and no crime whatsoever. And they have solved some problems, but they've done it by building a shield and keeping everyone else out. And so everyone inside the bubble, I would say, is either an owner, a capitalist whose fortunes are extracted from workers in the US, whether they work at the helicopter building plant or any of the other places shown. There's a record production plant that the ant is laid off from. The ant becomes a member of the Libra gang. So they're owners. And then I think there's Nepo babies.
Mm-hmm.
They're idle children who have nothing to do except play with their fortunes and their apps and their VR headsets and stuff. Just to be clear about Justice Warriors, this is a first volume in what we hope to be a many volume series of stories. Ben and I have tons of ideas, and we want to touch on all aspects of society with this for the next 10 years. We want to do elections in this world. We want to do sports in this world. We will focus more on the bubble, in some cases.
Yeah, an early influence on Justice Warriors is The Wire, actually, where every season it focuses on this other aspect of the sociological nature of crime. I wanted to do The Wire, but actually telling the truth about how the world works. And you can't tell the truth without a big old grin on your face because people will not enjoy it.
Yeah, I think when Ben first explained the wire idea to me, I loved it because tonally reading it, this doesn't seem like the wire at all. But I think after like 5 volumes, people will be like, "Oh, this is like a crazed cartoon version of the wire, where it like examines how aspects of this society actually look and work and touches on all these different lives. But except instead of newspapers and the shipping docks, we're going to do like a crazy lethal sporting event that has taken over, that everybody in the world, micro bets on, and how a mayoral election actually functions in the bubble."
Oh, I'm so excited. Yet I will say it does leave you wanting more and want that will and further explanations for things. The other thing I thought to tell our listeners and readers is that if you've read Matt's comics in particular, I don't think you will have ever seen Matt Boers draw anything as fucked up as some of the things that you do for this. It's quite striking your style being applied to this particular set of material.
Thanks. I mean, honestly, it's something I've been wanting to get to for a while. Like, I've always had an interest in genre comics and weird stuff and mutants and ultra violence. And I think that's why during the Trump era, I started doing all those wasteland comics that take place in sort of a Mad Max future with also, cyborgs and mutants and people wearing, Mad Max gear. I love drawing weird stuff. And that is what the world of Justice Warriors is.
As someone who edits a magazine filled with fake ads, I also really like the kind of interstitial things y'all have put throughout this book.
We should do more ads. Yeah.
Yes, we've got rap sheets, torture reports, social media feeds are all touched on.
Mm-hmm.
We like to give readers their money's worth. I mean, Ben draws the book, and I usually do the backup features. And, like I said, we really have 10 volumes of stuff fairly mapped out. Like, we have solid ideas.
Yeah, we got thousands of pages.
So we just need our publisher to agree to do one a year.
This is why everyone needs to buy this.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So we can get the 10 volumes. So everyone buy it.
It's honestly a very good deal for comics as well, because it's 170 pages for $20.
Yeah.
Which is a real steal, because you can pay $20 for 40 pages on a comic. It goes a long way. It's a beautiful book. We're really proud of it.
It is beautiful. Yeah. Came out very well. It's nice high quality paper.
And, not to pitch it too hard, but it is hard these days in the world of like Star Wars, Disney, MCU, dominance of entertainment, to do creator-owned stuff, particularly as stuff as weird and political as we're doing. So like Ahoy, our publisher, to their credit, was, is very supportive and let us tell this story. And so, we just need to find people who are actually interested in something a little different.
Yeah. There's no page on which there is not something interesting.
Not something you want to do with a comic book, just have an uninteresting page.
No, but there's so much variety across the book. I want to ask you, the world that you depict here, the world of Bubble City, it does seem very bleak, as I mentioned, that not many people seem to be having a good time. I don't know if there obviously is the Lieber Gang as a form of sort of resistance here, but not much in the way of an organized labor movement. Is there hope for Bubble City? Maybe that's something we'll find out in future series.
Yes, I think I could say very little hope.
Oh.
The reason being, I mean, Ben and I talk about this a lot, is that this has leftist politics as its core, but it's not about heroes who upend the system and, abolish the police and create equality, and then we're all happy in the end. It's very entertaining, I think, but it is a story about how systems perpetuate themselves and the status quo is maintained. And that is sort of a driving idea behind how we write it, where the characters in the book, including the cops, are all sort of have guardrails up about the decisions that they can make within the system that they exist in. A cop isn't going to have or even an individual mutant out there, it's not going to just have a political awakening and say the system is corrupt and then somehow overthrow it, because, you can't do that yourself. I would say that there's probably no massive labor movement, and this is not a very class-conscious society because everyone has been depoliticized and hooked to social media.
Well, and there is one character who expresses a very clear critique of the system, who is Madame Voyante, who's a dialectical fortune teller. And she presents a very clear-eyed materialist critique of the bubble and its systems, and then is shortly after crushed under a pallet of free money, which I think is my favorite joke in the whole book, that money and the force of money is going to tunnel and dilute and move people around, just like social media. And as Matt said, it is a book that's about systems, and it talks about how the bubble, which is sort of a shadow of our own world, is a material system. Like, it's a machine. It's a machine, and it has moving parts, and all those parts are moving in unison towards a common purpose. And it's hard to think that it's just going to change its operation or change its function on its own.
How familiar are you both with The Sopranos?
Watched it while drawing a long time ago.
Yeah.
I forget.
Well, the Madame Voyante thing you just described reminded me that there's a scene in The Sopranos where Carmela goes to see a psychiatrist, and he knows who she is, and he just gives it to her straight. He just lays it down. You're part of a criminal organization. You materially support your husband's crimes. Your wealth is stolen and is blood-soaked, and you need to take your children and run away if you are going to redeem your soul. And she wasn't there to hear that. And
no,
that's not within her realm of decision making that she's capable of. But it's like, The Soprano goes on, it's fun when they kill people or whatever. But that's a moment in the show where you just have like not even a tertiary character, just like a guy who shows up one time, just sort of tells you what is happening in the show. And so Madame Voyante in Justice Warriors is like that. She just lays this cartoon character. Actually, I totally forgot while we're talking about this. Mr. Gotcha, the guy from my comic, The Well, who pops out and says, "Yet you participate in society," is in this comic book, is in Justice Warriors.
He's the one who sees Madame Voyante.
Yeah.
I thought the guy visiting looked very Borsy.
Well, and there's a, there's a spoiler.
The eyes.
There's an autopsy report of him in the back matter that sort of tips you off that really is him. But he goes to the dialectical fortune teller doing Lacanian analysis, I think the neon sign says. Yeah. And she just sort of lays out in a very straightforward way what is happening in their world and what the book is about.
Yeah, so she says, I'll just read what she says. She says, Bubble City is the metropole accumulating the surplus value from the labor of the periphery. Leo's a system to serve capital maintained through physical structures like the bubble's dome wall, as well as the state's monopoly of force justified by, quote, the law, violence workers who maintain property relations and manage oppressed populations. That's how she describes the police, whose function is to suppress the inchoate rage and dissent produced as the others is alienated from the fruit of their labor. And right before, she is brutally and I have to say quite gruesomely crushed by a pallet of money. She is saying that a lot of folks are reassessing their relationship to work in this economy, but sadly, it's to go no further with that.
Well, if you have a leftist talking about the economy in the book, what better way to send them out than to have a pallet of money crush them?
Yeah.
It's a genuinely shocking moment. It's a shame to spoil the fact that she gets crushed with a pallet of money.
The picture still speaks volumes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you did a fantastic job of depicting what it would be like. I think there's an intestine coming out of the bottom here. Like if someone was actually crushed to death with a falling pallet of money.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
It's a lot of blood and guts that gets displaced in a fraction of a second, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Just another example of the brutality of capitalism.
I have to say, this is a graphic novel in the literal sense.
Yeah.
If you want to see the inside of a number of these mutant creatures, you will.
Yeah, but I thought about this a lot while drawing the book, that it has to be that way. Because if we're going to make a grown-up, enjoyable critique of capitalism, it has to have body horror. Because what is work but body horror? Like, the point of labor is that your body is literally being shredded and used up for the enjoyment of somebody else at the end of the day. And to sort of shy away from that or censor it because it's good manners to, I think, shirks at our responsibility as authors in this situation. I think a lot about like what the whole point. Matt and I talk about this a lot. We talk a lot about every aspect of the book. Like, what the hell are we doing? Why are we doing this? And I've come to the conclusion that it's there to complement the intelligence of readers who I think are thirsty for sincere and intelligent fiction in a landscape of candy, in a landscape of reassuring fairy tales, to be able to bite into something meaty with themes that doesn't beat you over the head with easy mythological lullabies, almost a transcendental experience. To be not alone, to have another intelligence engage with you through fiction, that can mean a lot.
I accept your justification for the body horror. I also think it must have been very fun to draw.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
Oh yeah. You know, you don't want to draw a boring looking comic book.
Hell no. Well, you certainly won't get, as you said, Ben, a reassuring fairy tale when you pick up Justice Warriors, as you will. It can be a pretty bleak, but it's not going to make you any more hopeful about the human future, I have to say. But it will make you laugh. It's a hell of a good time. It's beautifully drawn throughout in both of the parts that you've done. There's so many references to things, so many. As we said, it covers policing, it covers economics, it's so rich with satirical content. It is a mega satire. So yes, buy Justice Warriors now. Matt Bors, Ben Clarkson, thank you so much for joining us on Current Affairs today.
It's been our pleasure.
Hey, thanks for having us on.
The Current Affairs Podcast is a product of Current Affairs Magazine. If you are not subscribed to Current Affairs Magazine, visit currentaffairs.org/subscribe today and get our glorious print edition. The Current Affairs Podcast is released regularly every week on patreon.com/currentaffairs. Thanks for listening.